Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday, and it is November the 17th, the last week before the Thanksgiving week. Thanks for being aboard. We're going to be talking about the MAGA Civil War, this MAGA moment. It's like that little song. I got like a doo-wop song. I'm like, this MAGA moment. I don't know. Donald Trump decided to get really personal and went after Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I'm not a fantastic fan of. I kind of think a lot of mixed bag things. And Thomas Massie, who I am a big fan of. He decided to take shots at both of them over the Friday and into the weekend, and none of that stuff is great. And so the question came up, and I saw people on social media sort of commenting about this. Who gets to decide what is MAGA? What are the priorities of MAGA? And to the credit of at least the people who were taking this poll, 500-600 people or so, just a random sampling of folks online, they said the American people. About 20% of people said Donald Trump decides what MAGA is. I think that's right. I think that he doesn't get to decide what you are, for many of you who are MAGA people. And for those of us who are not, who are sitting on the outside, just going like, ooh. I feel like the guy that's doing the meme. Have you ever seen this? I think it's, I don't know what movie it's from, but this guy's like taking a long drag of a cigarette and his eyes are real wide. And he's like, you know, like me after watching the neighbor turn on his sprinkler system when I filled it with gasoline or whatever the meme says. I'm just watching going, oh boy, this is gross. It's really dark. Why is everybody so panicky? And all of this stuff erupted over Epstein files, which I thought was a common and shared priority for people on the right, to the point where the current deputy director of the FBI, the director of the FBI, members of the cabinet, the son of the president, the current vice president, they all went out and talked about how much this transparency was important to regular Americans. And the reason why the Epstein files hold so much sway over the national imagination and whatever they show, which I don't know and you don't know because I didn't work on them, and the stuff that I heard, it's irrelevant. Like it's not specific details that we can go out there and hang our hat on. The reason why they hold so much sway is because the Epstein situation represents this spectrum. The worst case scenario, which was articulated by many on the far right, or on the right, and I'll call myself far right, so you know that's not an insult. And then all the people in the middle. At the best case scenario, it represents a two-tiered system of justice where wealthy people get away with a different series and sort of sentiment of justice. They get to buy a better system of justice than we can afford. And then the alternative on the far end of it is that not only do wealthy and elite people get a different system of justice, but our federal government is involved in darkness, corruption, pedophilia, and the covering up of the destruction of innocence. So like that's a pretty big spectrum. But even the most benign version of it still doesn't sit well with regular people. I mentioned to people that there are worse scandals that are going on inside of our justice system. But the reason why the FBI director plain use hits really hard is that hypocrisy is universally disgusting to people. If you go out and campaign and say one thing, and then you are caught doing something completely different. If you espouse a certain amount of values out loud, and then you live differently, and people find out, it's really gross. That's the creep that's running around on his wife, but also is a mega, church pastor, and he speaks to tens of thousands of people about virtue and righteousness. And then you find out in the background, he's like running around on his wife and having another family and doing things that are the opposite of the thing he says. That is universally disgusting to people. And you don't even have to believe in the original version of it to look at it and just go, ugh, I don't want that. Kind of like this picture makes most people feel. This is Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump, and they were apparently golfing, and they had so much fun today, said Lindsey Graham, going to the Trump-Graham Golf Classic. They have a co-named golf classic that they played in. And that makes people pretty grossed out because Lindsey Graham is nasty. People on the left don't like him. People who are actually conservative think he's disgusting. People of principles think it's nasty. So this picture represents the worst of the sort of Donald Trump thing that people don't always get. And I don't get it. I really don't. I'm going to give you some reasons why he shouldn't be aligned with this guy ever. And yet he still is, which makes us ask all these questions. Like, what the hell's going on here? How are you going to go after Thomas Massie? You don't even have to like Thomas Massie. You can just go, he's a guy of principle. I disagree with some of his principles, but he believes in them and he lives by them and he's pretty consistent. So that makes it easy. And then there's Lindsey Graham, who we all just think about with ladybugs and a gross tongue sticking out and all the nastiness that someone like that slimy, southern, oily politician that people look at and know exactly what the voice sounds like before the mouth even opens up. It's hard to get behind Trump attacking one and then cozying up to the other. So this MAGA moment is going to be very interesting to watch. And again, for me on the outside of it, kind of looking in going, ugh. But that's not to say that I've forgotten about what is important or who is the really gross end of things. There's far worse things, even than Lindsey Graham out there. And so I was reminded of that over the weekend when somebody started pushing these Michelle Obama quotes. Apparently Michelle Obama is still out doing speaking. And she's racist, and she is short-sighted, and she is accepted by the worst types of people. She's allowed to say things without really acknowledging the underlying facts behind them. So I got some clips of Michelle Obama as a reminder to us that as much as I would like people on the right or people that claim to align with the right to do the things that they say they will do and that hypocrisy will gross me out, I do understand that there is another side of this. It could have been worse. Obviously, it could have been worse. I just like to see one of two things. Either we turn the car around or let's just mash on the gas pedal and just get there faster. If we're going to go into a complete catastrophic breakdown of what the entire values of this country were meant to be, let's just do it acceleration style. Maybe that's what Donald Trump is doing, cozying up to Lindsey Graham. Maybe he's an accelerationist. That's kind of fun. The alternative is we had an opportunity to do a U-turn and really take some ground back. We're not seeing it, so that bothers me. Before we get into today's program, Patriot Coolers is our longest sponsor, and they are fantastic as we move into the Christmas season here, as you are starting to think about gifts that you may want to buy for someone that you love, and you're thinking, that person kind of has everything. What about a trusty coffee mug that they will think about you every single time they lift up and drink? I take this one to church with me. I actually stole this from my wife. This is my wife's blue one. I have a black one. The handled coffee mugs are great. The spill-proof vacuum sealed flasks they have or tumblers are outstanding. And then we also use these big coolers all the time. As much as we love socks and gift subscriptions and cards that go to certain things, there's something about a tangible product that you can walk around and use. And every time you use it, you're like, oh yeah, I still have the Yeti cooler that my wife's aunt gave us for our wedding. I don't use it anymore. It actually just sits in the garage. But when I think of it, I think, oh, that was a wedding gift. That was nice that somebody thought of us like that. Patriot Coolers will be with your people for a very long time. And if you guys want to give them a gift that will stick around, they'll think about you when they do it. PatriotCoolers.com is the website. PatriotCoolers.com. The promo code KYLE saves you 10%. As usual, use my name at checkout at all times, and you will save yourself some money. You'll get free shipping if you spend more than $50. And they're good people. They make an attractive product that will compete with anybody. So let's get started off on today's program with a little bit of fun. We're going to end with a little bit of fun, too. One of you crazies created something for me that is unique. We're going to talk about hypocrisy in the MAGA moment. All right. So as we get into this here, I did want to say that I do not forget that there is a real problem out there. I guess the alternative could be worse. I'm just not the kind of guy that sits there and goes like, well, at least we didn't have that. Here's where we were. For all of you that want historical perspective, we can zoom all the way out and see that we are on a 120-year decline in this nation. Our money is worth less. I got into a discussion with somebody because I'm now looking at a new home. More on that in a second. But I have to find a new place to live because I didn't realize that they completely destroyed the place where I live. And now I know it. The evidence is overwhelming. I just shared it with my parents. It's like, okay, we got to go. Sometimes God gives you a sign in the universe. But if there's a 120-year decline on the American experience, and our money is worth less than it ever was before, and our freedoms are more infringed on than they ever were before, and our expectations of politicians and the people that lead us and are supposed to be the so-called elite, and they don't seem very elite at all, they just seem like every other sort of petty, corrupt person, we can also look locally and see in our lifetimes, even in the last 20 years, what was the major turn point? And for mine, it was the election of Barack Obama, which also represented a potential to show that Americans had moved beyond any sense of racism to the point where we were going to elect a guy who was black. We were going to have a family that was black that nobody really cared if what their skin color was per se, except the people that were touting it. It was like, oh, like, well, he's talking about hope and change and American ideas and things that sound okay. Yes, he was a socialist. Yes, all those things are the case. But I'm telling you, I was my young adulthood, just out of college. I wasn't that tuned into politics like most people weren't. I didn't really care. I just remember hearing it and going like, it's different than the alternative. This is what was the turn for most of us. And the crazy part of it is Michelle Obama coming out and saying these things long after the political relevance of Barack Obama. He can't gather a crowd anymore. He can't shame people into voting for Kamala Harris. She's still out there pulling the same race grift, this nasty, ridiculous, like pseudo leftist. It's like faux intellectualism. The woman who's asking these questions is also really gnarly. So if you're not watching on Spotify or Rumble or YouTube, like you're missing out. I guess you could be on X as well. This lady is sitting in this like sort of ball gown. She's the questioner, and she's holding her questions on this huge card. She has these ridiculous like satellite earrings. And I'm describing this because I want you to understand the utter ridiculousness. They're like cartoons of whatever the 1920s, like, oh, darling, like, can you believe that this is, I expect her to have one of those like long cigarette holders that's made out of, fiber. And then she's holding on to that. And the cigarette is 9 feet away from her fingers. And she's got this like a Cruella de Vil. That's what this lady who's asking the questions looks like. And then she has this crazy pseudo intellectual question from Michelle Obama, who jumps on it and says, yes, and allow me to point out to white people, because that's where we always go with it. Like they're so predictable. I do realize that there is an alternative. And the alternative was more of this. I'm sure Kamala Harris would have been a less articulate version, but the same crap. So this is just a refresher for me and also for you. There was a choice. We got the better of the two. But now that you guys have seen or heard what I've described, now you may see it and enjoy this grossness. Satellite earrings. Here it comes.
So thank you all for being there for us.
You stepped into a role that carried a preconceived idea of femininity and wifedom that was founded on the landmines of racism and misogyny. What the First Lady wears is one of the main ways, which you've already said, that a First Lady is talked about. It comes with so much historical expectation. How do you feel about the fact that the First Lady is an archetype for wifedom and femininity?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Don't agree with that. It's it is a completely throwback on. It's a definition that has no current status in how women actually show up in the world today.
Do you think that impacts the room that we've made for a woman to be president?
Well, as we saw in this past election, sadly, we ain't ready. That's why I'm like, don't even look at me about running, because you all are lying. You're not ready for a woman. You are not. So don't waste my time. We got a lot of growing up to do. And there's still, sadly, a lot of men who do not feel like they can be led by a woman, and we saw it.
I mean, yeah, yes to all that, but that's just because we've lived on this planet. Like all the worst bosses I've ever had were all women. I don't want a woman leading me at all. There's only one that has any say on what goes on, any directly, feedback into my life. It's my wife. That's a natural thing. We have shared stake in the equities that are involved in our home, like the raising of our children and the way that we spend our money and the things that are going on. So yeah, there's a woman that has a say, but I don't want that woman in charge, nor do I want any other woman that I haven't vetted. And here's the thing, men, this is just to men, so women, take a deep breath. When you select a wife and someone that you're going to spend your life with, you've gone through like some other options and you've seen how bad it could be. women, I'm sure that's the same case. I just haven't been a woman, so I'm not going to explain that. But yeah, there's a lot of crazy out there. Women, there's probably a lot of dirtbags and scumbags that do awful things and lie to you as well. So I get that. I'm just saying, I don't want a woman being in charge because I've read the Constitution in Article 2, and it's really clear. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen to the same term shall be elected as follows. I don't know. I just read the Constitution and it just says, he, right? They use masculine pronouns on purpose. You think that was an accident? No, it's because they couldn't fathom the idea. I would like to see someone argue this. Okay. In the case of removal of the president from office, or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of said office, the same shall vote to devolve on the vice president. I don't know. The president shall at stated times receive for his services a compensation which shall be neither increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within the period any other emolument from the United States or of them. All I'm saying is before he entered on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. And then they say what it is. Like, am I crazy? Does the pronoun crowd, the crowd that cares so desperately about what pronouns mean and what they indicate, do those people not ever read the Constitution? It's just there. It's like that's the definition of who can be the president. I don't mean to entertain myself so much, but here's why. This is so goofy to me, because I don't want that lady or a lady similar to that lady to be in charge of the things that the president is involved in. Men make decisions differently, like whether you know it or not. If you're a lady and you think that men think the same way as you do, that's why you're constantly upset with your husband. It's like, we don't think the way you do. And that's on purpose. It actually turns out we're designed differently on purpose. Perfectly. We don't care what black women's hair is, regardless of what women of any kind think. Actually, men, let's be real. We don't really care that much about women's hair at all. Like, we don't know. It's like, oh, you got your hair cut? Great. As long as it smells nice and it doesn't look like you've done something crazy to it. If you haven't done this thing that the alleged pipe bomber lady did, where you like cut it all off and have a haircut like Kyle Seraphin. Other than that, we're kind of okay with it. We just don't know. We don't think the same. Maybe that's why I don't want Michelle Obama involved in. Because apparently what we think about black women's hair, which I don't think anything at all, it is racist, whether I think about it or not think about it. Again, I'll just remind you again, this was the turning point, at least in my lifetime, when things got wild. Because this lady was apparently, she was navigating the landmines of racism and misogyny in sort of the textbook example of what marriage is in America. If Barack Obama and Michelle Obama were the model or guiding star on your marriage, please put it in the comments. I would like to know. If any of you thought any president was the guiding star for the way that you had your relationship with your own spouse, please tell me. I would like to know this. I've never even considered that to be a possibility. But satellite earrings did. Again, and then hair is racist.
Worry about it. Let me explain something to white people. Our hair comes out of our head naturally in a curly pattern. So when we're straightening it to follow your beauty standards, we are trapped by the straightness. That's why so many of us can't swim and we run away from the water. People won't go to the gym because we're trying to keep our hair straight for y'all. It is exhausting and it's so expensive and it takes up so much time. Braids are for y'all so we can work harder and focus on the work. So why do we need an act, an act of law to tell white folks to get out of our hair? Don't tell me how to wear my hair. Don't wonder about it. Don't touch it. Just don't. It just.
I don't know how to take that. I've never thought of Michelle Obama's hair, nor any other black lady's hair. I just don't. How narcissistic, how navel-gazing is the left? And this is my acknowledgement that there is a vast divide. I really disagree with people who make bad decisions and have horrible policies and who are hypocritical and say one thing and do the other. Like that really chaps my ass. I'll be real straightforward about that. But the you must acknowledge me in the way that I acknowledge me crowd, the you must care about my skin color as much as I care about my skin color and how it defines me, that crowd, I guess it's sort of fascinating, like looking at another species. But people who live on the left who want to tell me that I also must care about the things that they care about, it blows my mind. Because I can't fathom walking around and looking at people and thinking, why don't you care about the world that I care about? I intuitively know when I see someone who has sports cars that we have different interests. I like a strong truck that has capabilities that can drag my whole family off into the woods if I need to and hide and go over rocks and terrain. And you want to go fast on pavement. I don't think you're a worse person for it. It's just not my interest. Imagine if I was like, what's wrong with you? Why does your sports car not do what a truck does? It's like, because it doesn't, because it's not what I'm interested in. I'd be talking to a plumber and saying like, why aren't you an electrician? I don't know. I just was interested in flow dynamics and I really like piping. Like I don't get it. So this craziness, we are talking about the alternative being nuts. To me, crazy that you would imagine that I care about your hair or your skin color or identity politics, and I do think that it is wildly ineffective. But because people on the right do have different interests, different principles, they have different things that they care about, they're passionate about. We embrace that. Why? Because people on the right theoretically embrace an individual. And this is why a quote unquote MAGA moment is very interesting to see. Because what you're finding is that bothers the tribalists. Some people don't actually hold the principles of those on the right, the sort of conservative constitutional principles. I think there's two pieces of it. The libertarian aspect of it, which is that government should stay out of your business, and then sort of the Christian and religious ethos, which says that we do have a set of values. That's the only way that these government stays out of our principles. It's because our principles are good. So we could have that. But even people who are not Christian, I get along with plenty of them as long as we share the same values, which means that they may not be Christian, but I still think they're living in ways that are compatible with Christianity. And so that's fine. And then you have people like that who are mad at me because she thinks I care about her hair and I'm upset whether or not she goes to the gym or anything else like that. And I've worked with women like Michelle Obama, and maybe you have too, and it is atrocious. And many of them work in the federal government. It turns out a huge chunk of them do. And that'll take us to news story number one. I know that was a long way to get there, but it's my acknowledgement that I am not walking around in a world where I just go like, what's the right to it? Like, I'm not just poking at people because they're quote unquote on the same side. I'm not interested in division. What I'm interested in is good, solid, principled action. Even if we disagree with it, we should disagree with it for the facts and the reasons why. The FAA has lifted emergency flight reductions. They have eased the staffing pressure that came during the government shutdown, and now you should be able to get back on your flights. So if you were worried about air travel, it should be okay now that the government is reopened, which is tragic. Here's my question. The FAA is a required job that happens, like they actually sign contracts that say that they will work through government shutdowns. So why did they have staffing problems? And what did people do in the interim? What did they do instead of going to work? Now, I actually don't like the concept of government shutdown, you're required to go to work, but I do think it should be real simple for people. I think that the way that these things should be set up, this is the right answer for me, is that you can voluntarily show up with no expectation that they will pay your salary that you work during that time because you think your job is important. And if they do pay you back, they'll only pay back the people who voluntarily showed up to work. That's kind of like what I do here. This podcast is essentially a voluntary endeavor. I don't know that you're going to show up as an audience, and I don't know that my advertisers are going to write me a check and pay me. I just don't. They might not. They might go out of business. They may decide that they're not going to write that check, and they decide that they're going to see what happens if Kyle Seraphin has lawyers that want to go and come after them for the amount of money for a month of unpaid advertisement. I don't know. Like, it's in good faith. But I think if you show up to work in good faith during that time, then you should probably get paid if that's what Congress agrees. There are representatives. But I don't understand this idea that there was a problem because their job actually does require them, in order to keep it, they have to go to work. So why were there problems in the first place? Again, it's because people will work around, they'll serve their own best interests. And so that's why we have this sort of concept of civil servants. What I've always found in the government is these people serve themselves. Kind of have that same instinct about Michelle Obama. They serve themselves. They were there for their own purposes. They were there to be able to like lord over you and tell you whatever that craziness she just said on that stage with the lady who was doing that District 1 sort of, let them eat cake and wearing some costume. I don't know. My wife doesn't own anything even remotely close to the dangly satellite ears that lady has. I wouldn't even want to talk to a woman that has that. I would be like, oh, I could tell that you're a crazy person. You put a 1 pound weight on each side of your head. And unless you are counterbalancing night vision that's on the side of your face, which I don't know why you would do that, why do you have that crazy thing hanging off you? All right, so the FAA has decided to lift the emergency flight reductions because people are now going back to work in the job that they were required to go to work. This is yet another argument why the shutdown should have never been. It should have never been changed. It should have never been reopened. We should have been divesting these things to the state. We missed a huge opportunity. If you're a conservative, if you are a person who believes that small government is the answer, if you think that the anti-federalists were correct, and that you understand that I don't know why the federal government was ever involved in this sort of thing. Maybe they passed the regulations, but it's enforced at a state level of some kind. The FAA ended its flight reductions. The emergency order was lifted on Monday at 6 a.m. That's this Monday. Today, the cuts, which started with a 4% reduction in 40 major airports on November the 7th, so it's only 10 days old, were designed to address the fatigue and staffing issues among air traffic controllers amid the record-long government shutdown. But why? Are they not going to go back to work at the same rate now that they get paid? Again, if you're getting paid and your job security is that you know that you may go without a paycheck because of government shutdowns, because you only get a budget once every year and they don't do a good job of doing their job. So what is the fatigue and the staffing issues? Why do they have staffing issues? Well, can they do something different now that the government's open? None of this makes any sense, right? It doesn't even pass the first blush. What it tells you is that the government is too big. Our federal government is too big to manage a problem so small as your local airport wherever you live. And whether you live at a big airport or you live near a small airport, I do not understand what has changed fundamentally other than they're getting a paycheck. The job is the same. The requirements of the job are the same. Whether or not your check comes in for 2 pay periods, again, maybe I come from a place that's not particularly sympathetic, but I went for 14 months with no paycheck. My friend went for 3 years with no paycheck. And he had to, do begging and charity, and we had to raise money for him, and we did all these things. Yes, after 3 years, you can imagine. After 1 year, it's pretty hard to go without. But like for a couple of weeks, you didn't get a paycheck. And you have the most regular paycheck in the world because you work for the federal government. And you regularly don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to do a cost of living adjustment. And you know that they're always going to deposit it at the right time. There's not going to be someone who failed to show up and didn't make the pay. It happens. You guys, how many of you worked for a company that doesn't make payroll every once in a while? And you're like, ooh, some sale didn't, it went through, the product was delivered, but you're on a 90 days, a net 90. And so you haven't seen the payout. And so you're just waiting. And you're going in between the actual pay. If you're a restaurant server and you wait tables for a living, you have a bad night, nobody shows up, and maybe there's a big storm. That's it. Like, you don't get paid that day. It's confusing to me that probably the most stabilized paycheck that there is coming from our federal government would result in people having staffing issues. And maybe I'm making too much of this, but it's just a microcosm because I know that they used this to squeeze people to lift the government shutdown. I guess it's good because it's coming up on the heels of Thanksgiving. People are going to travel, and I do like seeing people. I like families together, so that's part of my values. I'm conflicted that we have this huge solution to this problem. And since we're talking about huge solutions, let me tell you why I'm moving. Can I share this with you? This is truly very personal, but also goes towards the things that I absolutely despise. A $22 million Target is coming to Texas, and it is set to be the largest Target, that's the Target retail store, in the world. That is not necessarily national news for everybody, but it is incredibly important news for me. This is a sign from God. For reference, you could fit nearly 2 of the world's largest Buc-ee's in this bad boy. That's the digital reporter from Austin Digital and My San Antonio says it. One of Texas' most booming communities is on track to welcome a new development in the mix and the possibility of the largest target in the entire world. The Austin suburb of Liberty Hill, where I live, is on track to welcome a 150,000 square foot mega target that's going to cost them $22 million to build. It will be 2 miles away from my front door, where I live right now. That is utterly unacceptable. Americans, consider this. If you found out that your home is about to have a giant target on it, are you sticking around? Isn't that the worst possibility? My actual nightmare is waking up and being locked inside a Target forever. I think that's the worst possibility in my whole life. I cannot. This is like something that my mother would tell me. She's like, yeah, it's a really good place to live. You can get to this. They have a Target. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that. No Targets. I want to live in a town with no Target. Is that a possibility? Anyway, I saw this and I realized that we have to move, which means that we're going to have to do some things about the show here. Because moving for the second time and not cross town, but cross country is going to be tough. It's going to be tough for this podcast. It's a one-man show. Look, you guys have seen this, but like if you haven't, tune into Spotify, check it out on Spotify. Here it is. This is what it looks like. This is the entirety of the show. It's just me. So there's no backup crew to make this happen. If they're putting in a $22 million target and women are saying, oh, I can't wait to visit this lovely new Target, which will be the same as my Target, but bigger. I got to get out of here. I can't be within walking distance of that. So now we're going to have to spend some time away from the program. We may have to take a month off to be able to get all the kiddos and Mrs. Seraphin and the studio stuff and put it in a box and ship it up somewhere in the Northlands where they don't have this. So anyway, I don't blame Donald Trump for this one. I'm just telling you, Americans are moving aggressively into Central Texas, except they're not Americans. Because you know who lives in the neighborhoods around us? Indian people, H-1B visa holders, people who I do not understand why they're in my nation and they do not live our values. They don't share that common thing. They don't have compatibility with what we do. They don't drive. They drive like crap. So I'm fascinated that this Target is actually the final stop on you no longer live in the America you thought you did, at least where you do right now. And so I got to go. Is that dark and sad? No. It's just, it's par for the course. It's just the nature of the beast. And since I'm talking about things that are bad news, I'm going to give you some more bad news. NBC has announced that the story is over of the pipe bomber. The FBI threw cold water on the story, suggesting that the Capitol police officer was a January 6th pipe bomber that was the so-called Blaze bomber, or the story that Steve Baker and team put out. But the problem is this. NBC News doesn't know what the people at the Blaze know, doesn't know what I know, and doesn't know what I imagine the people in our government actually know. So we're going to preemptively shut down this one story, the cold water, because now we take the word of the FBI. It's the same kind of thing as if people were to tell you that, we're going to bring in this amazing new thing. You're living in your local government. You go to the city council. Yeah, we want to bring in this huge construction project. It's going to be a Best Buy. It's going to be some big box retail store. We're going to really embrace our small town values by bringing in the most generic form of consumerism. And we'll all prosper with crappy jobs where high school kids can go and sell stereos. And you're like, I don't think that's going to work out real well for us. That's the same thing I see when I see NBC teaming up with the FBI again. The people who love the solution of government. The FBI closed cold water. This is Ryan Riley, who I like. I'll be candid. Even though Ryan Riley wrote the first hit piece that was ever put out there and the first negative statement about me before I was a political podcasting sensation, when I was just a guy sitting in my dad's study. I like Ryan. It's interesting to see this. It's interesting to see where it comes from. Imagine who talks to Ryan Riley. People who want to defend government, who want to defend the status quo. People who are trying to make sure that Steve Baker's story gets squashed. The FBI threw cold water on Thursday. The right-wing website that named a former Capitol police officer the potential match, the individual who planted the bombs at the DNC and the RNC, In a letter to a Republican congressman, the FBI explained that it had been tracking a separate person of interest who took photos near the RNC, and then on January 5th, then took the Metro back to his friend's house where he was staying to attend a J6 rally. The FBI said it focused on that home because the person taking the photos used the homeowner's smart card on the Metro trip. Congressman Barry Loudermilk says this explains a lot of the questions. No, it doesn't. What it doesn't explain is that Steve Baker's team was able to get a 94% gait match analysis on a person who had just a distinct right leg limp, a right leg drag, someone who happened to also work for the Capitol Police, someone who happened to have a new job at the CIA, someone who happened to have been more or less erased from social media, and someone who happened to live directly next door to that person that we were watching. It doesn't explain the ridiculous coincidence that we're going to have to call and believe that of the hundreds of thousands of domiciles that exist in the Washington, D.C. area, somehow the FBI put a surveillance team that I was on right next door to the place where this person that the Blaze found 5 years later. There's the doors. Throw cold water on this. How do you end up with the FBI identifying a subject or person of interest on the left when 5 years later, without any corroboration or cross-contamination, the Blaze found somebody that was on the right? Those doors are, 9 feet apart? I think the original story said 15, but looking at it, I think it's pretty much less. You could tell by the size of the brick. You could tell by the size of your average door. They're about 3 feet wide. You could fit about, a door and a half in between them. How do you explain that? How do you explain that our FBI, which since the time of January 6th spent over, almost $60 billion on their existence, and we're somehow supposed to believe that a reporter who works for a small media company, which may be worth hundreds of millions, but it's not even close to $1 billion and doesn't have anywhere near that kind of that funding, was able to come up with an answer. And let me just tell you, the story is not dead. Because over the weekend, Steve was briefing me up on what they have, and I'm waiting for their story to go live before we talk about it. But allow me to say this. I would say it's pretty conclusive from what they've got going on, that the Capitol Police not only were part of putting the bomb down, but they knew where they were the next day, obviously, because they were part of it. There's no other way around it. And the video evidence will actually convince you too. It's indisputable. So we're going to get into this non-answer that we got from our FBI director over the weekend. And then eventually, like I said, we're going to keep moving towards this MAGA moment. All of these things are relevant. Why? Because the big stories that were brought in that Donald Trump said that they were going to address, these were part of the campaign promises, were as follows. Cocaine in the White House, the Dobbs decision leaker, the pipe bomber from January 6th, the Epstein files. These were all Justice Department solutions. Why? Because Americans looked at Donald Trump as the solution to weaponize government. They said there was a hoax that got you out. There was potentially election fraud that made the 2020 election be a problem. They said that you need to have accountability, that there's a deep state of people that have all sort of collaborated and they all have the same views and they're part of the media and they're part of the government system and they all have government as the solution. And by the way, it's our government, not your government, and we're going to do what we want with that government. And instead of people going in there and gutting them, which certain agencies have done, generally what we saw happen was people went in and joined them and became cheerleaders for the same government agencies that they used to cry about regularly. They used to say, these are the problems. And they said, don't just believe us because we say everything's fine. Wait for actual documentation. You know, like people showing you videos or people giving you conclusive evidence or saying, this is the computer program that we use and this is what the analysis says. Why are they going out and covering up the things when they should have been the most aggressive? The right answer for the FBI would have been, by the way, not on the pipe bomb story, would have been to say, we really appreciate the work of the Blaze. This is groundbreaking stuff. We're going to take it and we're going to try to run it the final mile and see if we can check it out. Or they could do this. They could say things like this.
I'm telling you, don't trust anyone, me included. We don't bring receipts. Throw it out the window. I'm telling you, don't trust anyone, me included. We don't bring receipts. Throw it out the window.
Has the FBI brought anything like a different subject of interest? Have they explained some of the things that were in the Loudermilk report from a year ago? They haven't, and I'm going to show you those at the end of the show too, but let's just be real. There's some real problems in this stuff, and going out and doing messaging and a marketing campaign is not going to be the solution. Talk's cheap. I think somebody used to say that works there now. Let's get into a quick read for one of our sponsors here. Actually, one of you guys just tagged me on the Cove Pure systems. Don't tag me when you buy them. Tag me when you start using them, because I think you'll like it. And that's it. Like, it's really simple. The website is covepure.com/KYLE. They're doing a November special. You're going to save $250 off from their normal price. You guys can buy in on that. Here's the deal. The Cove Pure unit is easy to set up. It doesn't require any additional plumbing. It has size presets that make it easy to make sure that you're drinking enough water and that you're filling the vessels that you actually have. My kids have like an 11 or a 12 ounce little container, so we fill it up to that. So they've got an 8 ounce, they've got a 16 ounce, and a custom. We have that set for 11, so that it doesn't overfill their water bottles. You know, because like 3 and 4 year olds can push the button and actually use it. It lets you set the temperature, which is cool. It locks out the boiling water setting so you don't have your kids burn themselves, which is fantastic. You have to do an unlock, and so you have to figure out how to do that, which a grown up can do, but a kid may struggle with. And you can also set it for not boiling. So you can do 212 degrees if you want full boiling, but you could do 195 or 185 if you're making tea and you want to be able to drink it right away. Some of you are like tea nerds or coffee nerds and you have your very specific French press settings. You can get a huge mug underneath there or your entire French press. So all that's great. And then lastly, maybe the best part of it is you get clean, good tasting water that doesn't have aftertaste. It doesn't have like the junk, like mine is full of sulfur. These are lab certified machines that are going to remove 99.9% of contaminants. It's going to get rid of PFAs and pharmaceuticals and fluorides and lead and arsenic, pure water. But the easy part is that you just taste water that tastes better. Like, you don't necessarily know if you're drinking junk, but you can tell when you're not for some reason. The taste is actually quite a bit. Covepure.com/KYLE, covepure.com/Kyle. Link in the show description. Again, right now they're doing a $250 off holiday discount. So if you guys are looking for one for yourself for Christmas, I know people that wait till November and do Black Friday only when they buy these kinds of things. This is the time to jump in and get that stuff. Let's keep pressing on. I brought this up because, again, reliability is a big piece of it. What about that guy that we just heard a second ago? The Bongino dude. Remember him? If we don't show up with receipts, he spent some time over the weekend saying some really silly stuff, saying, sorry to bother your weekend, but here's some social media spin and BS. This story broke after we did our program on Friday. The FBI director, Kash waived polygraph security screenings for Bongino and 2 other senior staff members. That's actually a really big deal. The deputy director gets the president's daily brief. The guy who wrote this, Will Turton, is over at ProPublica. I've spoken with him for probably at least the last year, maybe longer. I think his reporting is credible. This story is going to be actually part 1 of other things that are going to come out this week regarding the failure to follow basic security protocols. And if there's a good answer for it, then the answer should come out. Why did he not get a polygraph that was conclusive? Everybody who has a security clearance, who's worked in the government, all of you that are in this audience that work either in the FBI or the intelligence community or the military that get a TS clearance, you know what I'm talking about. You need a polygraph. It's junk science, it's garbage, but everybody does it. And it's a reason that they ward off what's called the insider threat, people who are spies and traitors or might have some sort of, secrets to hide. The claim that Bongino put out was that he was previously in the Secret Service. The FBI's spokesperson, Ben Williamson, came out and said that he has 20 years of law enforcement. First of all, he has 16 tops, which is a lot. It's great, but he hasn't been in the government for about 15 years. So that what they call break in service is critical. And if anybody's ever gone through a DEA, an FBI, an HSI, like you take it, if you go from local law enforcement to federal law enforcement, you have the hardest and most rigorous polygraph that there is. There's an additional section for people who are prior law enforcement. Why would that be? Oh, because like certain things are available to people who are in law enforcement that are not available to the average guy. If you're the average Joe and you work a day job that doesn't involve arresting people, if you have a day job that doesn't involve taking people's liberties, taking their freedom, and potentially being able to take their life, then the sort of things that you need to be asked about are different. When I went in, I didn't have that job. I was a paramedic. So they ask the normal questions. They ask you about drug use. They ask you about money. They ask you about academic cheating. They go to like character things. They ask you if you've ever committed a crime and gotten away with it. The guys who are former cops have to ask, they get questions about use of force. Have you ever, blurred the line? Have you ever participated in an investigation where you shaded the line to favor one thing or another? There's some really specific things that happen in law enforcement that are of higher scrutiny when you go get a top secret clearance. So this is kind of bizarre. Bongino's role as the second highest official means he's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the FBI, including greenlighting surveillance missions, coordinating with intelligence agency partners, and managing the FBI's 56, I think it's 55 now, field offices across the country. Deputy director received some of the most closely held secrets, including the president's daily briefing, which contained intelligence from the CIA and the National Security Agency. The FBI holds its own clearance. Your Secret Service, it doesn't actually matter. If you were a Secret Service agent and you became an FBI agent, you get another polygraph. That's just how it works. Oh, how do you know that? Because some of my classmates in the academy were from the Secret Service. What if you come from the CIA? Yes, you get another read-in. How do I know? Because some of my classmates came from the CIA and they still got the FBI polygraph. The FBI holds its own clearances. Now, there is an argument for an interim clearance, like get this guy to work, we're going to read him in, and then we go through the process on our time when we find polygraphers that we think are going to be decent. In other words, there may be some biased actors out there, and that actually is a reasonable argument. So let's play both sides there. You still have to have a polygraph on file. And Bongino went out and did about 5 paragraphs of nonsense, and the problem with it is that he did not say, I have passed an FBI polygraph just like every person who's ever been the FBI deputy director. Usually those people have been passing them for about 2 decades. You're supposed to get a periodic reinvestigation every 5 years. This story is way bigger than like the headline might seem. And what do? You always know that these guys squawk and they start doing explaining when they're losing. I feel like Bongino knew this rule too. Politics. If you're explaining, you're losing. If you can ignore it because it's not a big deal, then no big deal. This is a big deal. And the other people who are also in the senior staff are also peoples of problems. And it loops back to the story I was talking about a moment ago. For those of you talking about Bongino being a political appointee, he is not, traditionally speaking, the same as a true political appointee. Those people get put in by the advice and consent of the Senate. That is not the case for the FBI deputy director. You would not have this job without a security clearance and a full normal read-in. And he has an atypical process. Now, there's other things on there, and I've talked to some folks that are involved in, sort of defending Bongino instinctively, and I don't mind that. And when I said this, some of them got real quiet. I said the things that the polygraph used to go out there and find was financial impropriety, marital infidelity, anything that could compromise you, that could be used as a blackmail or extortion tactic on you when you have access to secret information. And some of them got real quiet about that. Now, I don't know what that means, and I'm not actually implying anything. What I'm saying is there are some questions. There were questions going back to what his brother was involved in years ago when he was a Secret Service agent and was implicated in something that went on down south in South America. Like, guys in the Secret Service, they travel away from home quite a bit, and things happen. And I'm not a person to go and sit in judgment. What I'm saying is that they used to have a deal inside the intelligence community. George Hill told me this was a thing that the NSA used to do, that if they found out that you had been involved in marital infidelity with your spouse, just so you guys understand how serious these things were and how seriously they used to be held up. Now, this wouldn't work for the current FBI, by the way, because like most of the senior management is like sleeping around, or a big chunk of it is, to the point where when something would happen and we'd see an inspector general report and I'd put it out to my sources in the FBI, 300 people would come back and like I would get 4 different field offices that would fit the pattern. In other words, 4 special agents in charge were busy sleeping with a special assistant or their secretary or some other things. So there's a lot of sexual malfeasance, and I was covering that with Kash Patel, discussing this at the time before he was ever director. We actually have a chat group over on Signal called Sex BI. I kid you not. I show screenshots another day, where Patel and Erica Knight and Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle and I were all trying to compare notes to figure out who were the most compromised people inside the FBI. It's a real thing, okay? And they don't check for it anymore. But it used to be that if they found out in a polygraph that you had been involved in infidelity to your wife, they would make you confess to your wife in front of the polygrapher and the background investigator so that they knew that she knew and you could not be compromised by this information. Do you guys get that? Do you know how intense that used to be? They don't do that anymore because a lot of people are now compromised for a lot of different reasons. But a polygraph is not nothing. And if everybody in the agency does it, and they can be fired for failing it, which they can be, if you can remove and lose your clearance because of it, it's one of the adjudicative guidelines, then that's not just something you just blow and brush away. Whew. Nothing to see here. We'll also remember that he got into a big fight with Pam Bondi, so that seems like it should be relevant. ProPublica could not determine whether Bongino sat for a polygraph exam or what the results were. You can waive it under the exception that the director might do, but nobody else does that, as far as I know. Ben Williamson wrote, the FBI follows all laws and procedures on personal security measures, and any implication otherwise is false. Well, if the answer is they gave him an interim clearance and they're going to hold that until he's gone, that's problematic. Furthermore, while the FBI does not comment on confidential security information, particularly in matters of personnel, this article is riddled with falsehoods. They always give it away, folks. This is why I hate government. This is my regular and ongoing position. They always give away the game because they cannot help but say things which kind of tells you that there's a shading and a falsehood. While we do not comment on it, this article we will comment on. Well, why? Because it looks awful for you. And what they don't say is definitively, Dan Bongino took a polygraph and it was negative, just like it's supposed to be. And he is 100% in the good graces of the security division like every other FBI employee. That's not what they say. You'll notice that. It misrepresents polygraph protocol, inaccurately portrays FBI security measures, and makes multiple false claims about FBI employees who have done nothing wrong. Who are the other people that are involved? The two people that are involved are Nicole Rucker, who used to work for Stephen Miller. And now the implied sense that you get from reading this is that the ProPublica is kind of insinuating that she has a direct hand on steering the FBI via her connection to Stephen Miller. They deny that as well. I don't know. But it's an interesting connection. And then the other person is Marshall Yates. And Marshall Yates is the liaison to Congress, also known as the Assistant Director of Congressional Affairs. He used to work for Tom Massie. And he was the quote-unquote expert on the J6 pipe bomb. I think this week you guys are going to find out something really big. Not only do I continue to believe that the FBI covered all this stuff up, the pipe bomber and the story that's so relevant there, I think that they continue to do it, and I think they continue to do it knowingly. There's a lot of folks that try to go out there and make cover for these guys in the Bureau right now. There are people that are trying to cover for, or they're trying to put the blame on Susie Wiles. Hold on, do I have a Susie Wiles picture? I do. This is the look that Susie Wiles has whenever Kash Patel's story breaks, right? She looks pissed. They try to put the blame on Susie Wiles. They try to put the blame on anyone other than Donald Trump and the people that are actually doing the thing they're doing. But it is intentional at this point, the way they're doing it. And it's going to be really obvious to you because the personnel that are selected in specific places continue to operate in the same way as the old FBI did. So then the question comes up is why, as you guys are acting in the chat. There are a couple of reasons. One of them is pride. I don't want to admit that other people scooped me and duped me. And that's one real strong reason. And I think that plays to both of the suits of the people that are there. The other reasons are much darker. And if you can't pass a polygraph, it makes me ask a lot of other questions about you. Why is right? Okay? I don't know the answer. I don't need to speculate on somebody else's motives in their heart. I actually said that the first time I sat down with Dan Bongino. The first interview I did, September of 2022, he said, why do they do this? I said, I don't know. And far be it from me to try to accuse somebody of what's going on in their heart. This is the brilliance of our system. I can look at their behaviors and I can see you claim certain principles and you live by those principles. That's easy. I can see that you claim certain principles, you don't live by those principles. That's hypocrisy. The why, that's on you. And that's going to take us, I think, probably to the story about Epstein, but there's a couple of other things that are also worth covering in here. So let's also just kind of hit this. The pipe bomb story continues to be a problem for these guys, and they're going to do everything they can. So they ran out on the Sunday shows to try to defer. This is going to get to the Epstein piece too, because the Epstein story, something one of my buddies said was so amusing. The scandal of the FBI not finding the pipe bomber 5 years later is so bad that they may have to release the Epstein files to cover it up. Think about that for a second. We are now going to have a real vote. Donald Trump has picked a fight with MTG, picked a fight with Thomas Massie, said awful things about him, claimed that he's some sort of awful human being because he got married after his wife died. This is a man, Trump, difficult to take that one. Been married, 3 times? Apparently has been engaged in adultery on all those fronts. I don't know that Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Michelle Obama are going to be the model of what I look at for a marriage. But if you live and marry your high school sweetheart and you're married to that person for 30 years and they die of a horrific disease and then you get remarried again because the parts of your life that you can't figure out what to do with. I know that I told my wife the other day, I was almost in tears about it. I was like thinking about going through life without my partner, who's only been my partner for 12, 13 years. I don't know what I would do with myself. I don't know how to do a lot of the things that I've taken a decade away from solving those problems because there's a person in my life who handles them. To find out that there's that just huge gap missing, I would hope that society would tolerate taking care of widows and widowers. Anyway, meanwhile, we're going to try to cover up the pipe bomb scandal by potentially even releasing the Epstein files, or at least having a bigger talk about that, because that is less incriminating than what it says about our government. It's better to probably look at a foreign guy or a foreign potential, obstruction problem and covering up child pedophilia. It's better to actually reveal that than show that our intel services, that our U.S. Capitol Police, and that our FBI were involved in a simple cover-up that resulted in thousands of families and lives getting destroyed, which they did. This is Patel doing a Maria Bartiromo hit to try to cover up. You'll notice he almost says nothing. Let's see what he says.
And I want to move on to a few other issues before you go. And of course, we always talk about.
By the way, he just sniffed so aggressively. Listen again when he starts. His first thing is that he sniffs.
And I want to move on to a few other issues before you go. And of course, we always talk about the last 10 years of conspiracy against President Trump. And it started with the Russia collusion, on to the indictments and the impeachments. And of course, January 6th. Do you have any news for us on January 6th in your investigation?
I think you'll see something on that front very soon. As you know, we can't reveal our ongoing investigations. And as it goes for things like Russiagate, Maria, again, maybe no one better than you has covered it. And look, I lived it. I was weaponized as a victim against a weaponization, politicization of law enforcement, including at the FBI, by former senior leadership there. And I was the one that ran and uncovered the Russiagate hoax and conspiracy back on my House Intel days. I can't talk about ongoing investigations, but I think you've seen reporting in the media and reflections as to what's going on. We will not allow anyone who participated in the Russiagate conspiracy, or those who improperly and illegally, in my opinion, spied on me, members of Congress, and even members of the media for a political end state, to be left unturned. These are investigations that are of important consequence to the American public. Deputy Director Bongino and I have lived through it with you and everyone else. And we don't ask you to trust us, but look at the work we've put in under President Trump's leadership.
What work, buddy? Let's just be real honest here. I heard Dan Bongino say, bring the receipts. So what suspect have you put forward? What conviction have you got? What indictment have you obtained? It's 5 years. Why are you talking about it now when you kept your mouth shut about it? There's going to be more stuff coming about Thomas Crooks this week as well. That should really hit home. Donald Trump was a quarter inch away from dying. As one of my buddies like to say, if I'd narrowly been spared death at the hands of an assassin's bullet, I would wake up every single day and ask God, what is it that you want from me? Why am I still here? You'd think that a scar on your ear would remind you every single day that my time on this earth is limited and I was saved but for the grace of God. So what is it that you ask of me? That's what I would think. Is it that you want this guy Patel doing his sniffs and saying nothing for a long period of time on Fox? Is that what you're empowered to do? Because it does seem like the pipe bomb story was part of the broader circumstances, which was the narrow miss of the bullet. The bullet being fired was the January 6th prosecutions. The narrow miss was Donald Trump actually being elected in November and pardoning these people. Right? Isn't that what happened? Didn't some people's life get spared? But for Donald Trump being elected, they would be living in ruin financially. Many of them are still in a bad spot and will never recover and will never trust their government, nor should they, until all this stuff is exposed. And there's a lot more to it. Seems like a problem. If you guys are just listening on the audio, give us a chance on Spotify. I think you'll find that being able to switch to video is nice on occasion when you want to use it. You can also control all the speed and everything else that you're used to. You can even jump through the ads. You're going to hear a Spotify ad right now. At least I think you will. If you're watching on Rumble or if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, give us a like. We appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're notified if you guys want to see us go live, if you want to be part of the live show. Many of you guys show up in the mornings for that. And if you're looking for that Spotify and you're like, hey, I just don't know anything about Spotify, Seraphin, what's up with that? It's KyleSeraphinShow.com. Very easy to find. You want to support the program here, you can go to Locals. You can be part of our community. We do a call-in show. You guys can tell me what you guys think on Thursday nights. Those are always fun. They're always illuminating. I find out what you guys are all about. But again, if you're watching on our bigger audiences, which is the video, by a lot, the videos are much bigger at this point. Subscribe there. Make sure you've liked the videos and carry on. Let's keep going with this story because, again, I'm kind of blown away that this is how silly we are. This is how unserious we are about this pipe bomb situation.
What we can say.
Well, what we can say is that Pam Bondi is focused on the things that really matter. Remember, I heard Bongino say it in multiple interviews, including with Maria Bartiromo. I just heard Kash say it again. These are the investigations of serious importance. We brought up the one that they think was seriously important last week. I'm going to give you a conclusion on it because praise to be to all things holy. They found a guy who had a bat that went through somebody's office that wasn't in their office. That's literally the story. Let's do that real quick.
What we can say is we are finding these people, we are arresting them, and we are charging them. They will go to prison for as long as we can send them. We know who did this to Alina Habba. I saw the video. It's chilling. This guy had a full-size baseball bat pacing like a caged animal in front of her office. Then ultimately he gets up to her office without the bat, but manages to tear apart the front office.
All right, so if you guys are trying to figure out what that story was from that lady who was imprecisely stating it, who is the Attorney General of the United States, this is the guy that they caught, Keith Michael Lisa. He apparently had a bat and he was pacing around and he was very pissed off. Then he left the bat and went up to somebody's office, which was like the vestibule of the actual office. And then he messed up stuff on the desk. And that was terrifying. And so that was the biggest, it involved a most wanted tweet to social media. This man must be found. This man who messed up somebody's desk. Not the pipe bomber, right? Not much bigger stories that involve violence or the loss of life or people who are hurting children. No. A guy who had a bat and then didn't have a bat, and it was absolutely terrifying that he broke some stuff. He broke the trinkets and the tchotchkes that was on somebody's desk that was like her secretary because she wasn't there. You notice how she called it an attack on Alina Habba? It's nice to see the Trump administration people in the Justice Department are really willing to focus. They take them a day to find somebody that sends a mean letter or a threatening letter to Benny Johnson. It takes them a day or two to find a guy who had a bat but didn't use a bat and who went in and broke like somebody's Waterford glass crystal that was on their desk. That's a most wanted. Where's the pipe bomber? Fox News, never one to not celebrate this stuff. This is why you guys have a hard time. Like, this is why I actually use it as an insult. If you're a Fox News viewer and you do it for content and for education and for information, you are getting pure propaganda. Here's a brilliant piece of propaganda from them.
The suspect in the attack on acting U.S. Attorney Alina Habba's office in New Jersey is now in custody.
They got him. Chandler Painter here with the latest details. What happened, Chandler?
Yeah, so Attorney General Pam Bondi making the announcement, posting, quote, thanks to the great work of the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, and HSI, the suspect wanted in the attack on U.S. Attorney Habba's office is now in custody. No one will get away with threatening or intimidating our great U.S. attorneys or the destruction of their offices. This all comes after the FBI offered a $25,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of that man. Here he is, Keith Michael Lisa. Police say he has ties to Mahwah, New Jersey and New York City. Well,
Great work. It took the FBI, the United States Marshal Service, and Homeland Security Investigations, 3 federal agencies, to catch a guy who had a bat but didn't use a bat and then broke some stuff on a desk. And they offered a $25,000 reward, which, by the way, was the same amount of money they offered for the pipe bomber right afterwards. So $25,000, if we were to say that these are commensurate level cases, they had the same reward. You know, breaking some stuff on a desk and knocking over the jar of pens is equally bad to dropping pipe bombs outside of the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee's offices. Right? At least we have a really serious guy who's on the case, and he's going to tell you that we're probably definitely going to be talking about something soon enough, so make sure that you tune in soon again for later. Bookmark it for breaking news exclusively today in the future. At not this exact moment, but at another moment when I will in fact be giving you all the things you need to hear about, probably, if I have them. Was that confusing enough? So is this statement from, oh yeah, Kash Patel on Fox News.
And we've been working like we have with the deputy director to unearth that. And as it relates to major investigations of public importance like the pipe bomber, again, I say, stay tuned. We reviewed every single investigation of public consequence, reopened them, reevaluated them, because we feel it cannot go untouched. We are not going to let these things lay by and allow the fake news media to run roughshod over us. Our indictments speak powerfully in court. If you don't believe us, just look at the response that the Eastern District of Virginia under Lindsey Halligan did to James Comey, and look at the notes and publication of evidence. That's the type of material we have, but we have to safeguard our prosecutions because the ultimate accountability is with the verdict in a jury room.
Understood.
All right, got it. And there's Susie Wiles, and she's looking at Trump, and she was like, "This guy is destroying your credibility, sir. Are you absolutely out of your mind?" Now, we have it on fairly good authority that the Trump administration has a no scalps policy, which means they're not going to like fire somebody off and put them out into the world without another job. So I don't know. I understand that maybe there's an ambassadorship to Pakistan that would be of value. We could send him over there. Maybe he could be the ambassador to Afghanistan. I think he spent some time there when he was working for the Justice Department. Maybe he could be the ambassador to the moon, a newly appointed ambassador to the United States to the moon, to the not people that don't live there. Anything would be better than what we got going on right now. And part of it is because we're going to have the MAGA moment where we're going to fight over the Epstein files in order to cover up the thing that he was just saying. What'd he say? Tune in. Breaking exclusively, not today, but another time, soon. He's going to get scooped by the Blaze on their own case, and they're going to look like absolute fools. Mark that one. Put that on your stay tuned. Put that on your bookmark. Why is it so relevant? Why do these cases matter? They matter because these guys all said they matter. Here's a brilliant compilation of people that currently work inside the Trump administration that have significant amounts of influence on the way that the Trump administration has done business. They said it mattered. We're just taking them at their word. Again, what is the difference between the left and the right? The left tells you that hair is racism and that we're supposed to look at the president as a model for our marriages. That's crazy. We don't do that. We've got other reasons. But what we can do is look at people in their own words and decide whether or not it's hypocritical for them to say, oh, by the way, we said it earlier, but now we don't say it. So now you don't say it either. That's not how it works. Here's the Trump administration montage talking about Epstein.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. Why is the FBI protecting the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list?
Some governments around the world may have some material that's related to the Epstein thing. Bill Clinton was knee deep in this, man.
He was knee deep. Yeah, you got to release it. Now what? What changed? They literally campaigned on this. It was part of the platform of MAGA.
I mean, they did. They campaigned on it. They said what was going to happen. They said, this is the thing that we're going to release. We got to get it done. So where is it? That's why people are talking about it. And so they end up with this real ugly scenario where we've got Lindsey Graham hanging out on a golf course with Donald Trump, getting this sort of love. More on Lindsey Graham in a second because it's truly gross. And then you have Donald Trump now, after bullying and badgering and trying to discredit and disowning Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massie, one of whom I like, one of whom I am indifferent to. It's a really gross moment for all the chips. Because what you're seeing is that principles are irrelevant. And people are going to have to decide what MAGA means to them. For all of you that have put that in your bio, for all of you that will describe your friends that way, you have to decide, does Donald Trump unilaterally get to decide what MAGA means? As one of my friends said, MAGA means whatever Donald Trump says is good for me. That may be the case if you've outsourced your opinion to somebody else. I don't think, strictly speaking, you're a conservative, and I don't think that means you have any principles, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you've now outsourced to a very braggadocious, loud person who is fickle. You're now going to be ceding your sort of authority and your agency to somebody else. That's a choice. It's very tribal, the chief speaks for me kind of thing. Or you can say, I have principles. I believe that when someone says something, then I want to hold them to their word. And that does seem to be closer to what Tom Massie has been doing for quite a while now. I don't think I'm making this up. So he's addressing being attacked, having his marriage attacked, which is sad. Like, again, I read the story there and I went like, oh man, this is going to be so gross. People are going to say nasty things. You live with somebody until they die. If your spouse dies on you and you remarry, if you're going to get attacked by a person who hasn't even been faithful to one of his spouses and he's been married multiple times, I just don't think the right person is throwing bombs. But again, that person doesn't seem to care. Massie answering these questions, and I think he accurately calls it bullying. And crazy enough, Donald Trump, over this weekend, he actually changed his tune to the point where now he's saying we got nothing to hide. So we'll go to that story in just a second, which is coming from ABC. Here's Massie answering the allegations of the weekend.
The president's gone after you in some deeply personal ways. I mean, attacking you over and over again, even attacking you for, regarding your wedding, your recent wedding, which, by the way, congratulations. What do you make of all that? And he's obviously supporting your primary opponents. I mean, what kind of retribution are you facing?
You know, my wife told me, she said, I told you so. We should have invited Donald Trump. He's mad that he didn't get an invitation. So we're taking it with a grain of salt. He's being a bully or trying to be a bully. And they're trying to beat me here in Kentucky. But here's what's interesting. The people financing this campaign consist completely of 3 billionaires, and they're all in the Epstein class. In fact, one of them is named in Epstein's phone book. Not the secret files that the FBI is keeping, but in Epstein's phone book. So it's a small world. Dogs don't bark at parked cars, and we are winning. I'm not tired of winning yet, but we are winning. And not only the speaker, but the attorney general, the FBI director, and the president himself and the vice president, they're taking a big loss this week because after months of fighting, I am winning this week with Ro Khanna. We're forcing this vote, and it's going to happen. I would remind my Republican colleagues who are deciding how to vote, Donald Trump can protect you in red districts right now by giving you an endorsement. But in 2030, he's not going to be the president, and you will have voted to protect pedophiles if you don't vote to release these files, and the president can't protect you then.
How do you combat that sort of knowledge? Because he can't. You know, Donald Trump will fall off as being the most important person the minute that he can no longer win an election. Doesn't mean he won't have sway and people won't think what he thinks is important. But he won't have the same sort of pull because he won't be winning an election. That's true. You hear what Massie just said? Dogs don't bark at parked cars. They don't bark at parked cars, rather. That's an interesting thought. That reminds me of the same story as when somebody makes some statement. For example, when William Turton says Bongino didn't get a polygraph, and it has a flurry of reactions. Bongino goes out and says something. Ben Williamson goes out and says something. They're all explaining. They're all losing. Well, if it was a parked car, they would just move on because you got it wrong. When you say things wrong, it's just like, who cares? Nobody cares. For you who are saying, well, look, Tom Massey's going to talk to ABC. He's talking to NBC. I'm going to play you a clip from CNN. They're all into it. Yeah, I get that. We don't have to look at the source that's willing to platform the information and say that they're of value. People are quoting Kyle Seraphin today in MSNBC, NBC, CBS, the New York Times. If my message goes out to those people as well, I didn't change. They did. They think it's against the Trump administration, so they're willing to put my stuff out there. Fine, thank you. Occupy Democrats said FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin has been highlighting misuse of the jet. That's all true. I am those things. It doesn't matter who says them. So for those of you who are like, well, look at the messenger. Forget about the messenger. Consider the message. Does the message resonate? Do dogs bark at parked cars? Do people lose their mind over things that are not relevant? They do not. Do you see the sort of outsized reaction when the information is false and not interesting and so far off base that like no serious person would take it seriously? It's not really what you guys think. Here's CNN covering the story of MTG, and they're talking about it being like, they love playing up the drama of this because there's this internal MAGA civil war, whatever you want to call it, the MAGA moment, as I said. That's fine. That doesn't mean that there's not a real problem there. They're going to highlight the drama part of it. How about we highlight the hypocrisy as people of principles? We say, you campaigned on this, quite literally. The vice president said it. Your FBI director said it. Your deputy director said it. Your attorney general said the Epstein files are on my desk and you're going to get them. All of this stuff out there, those are principles. How they spin the drama and they do the Real Housewives bid, or if they want to go out there and do the TMZ routine of who said what to whom and why and these mean things, those are irrelevant. Because the principles are, at some point, if you are covering up for pedophiles, and if that's what's in those files, and Massie seems to think there is, then that is simple principle to stand on. If you're willing to go on political expedience and exploit or allow the exploitation of children and say, well, that's some old stuff. Just saying. Here's the CNN coverage of it. Again, you don't have to discount the message just because the messenger is bad.
A political feud unlike any other, and probably one that you never thought you would see. Donald Trump earlier attacked Marjorie Taylor Greene, and tonight the Republican congresswoman is responding directly to the president after he said he's pulling his endorsement over her recent criticisms of his administration. Listen to what Marjorie Taylor Greene just responded a few moments ago after the president said he didn't have time to take her call every single day, referring to her as a lunatic. Here's what MTG had to say. President Trump just attacked me and lied about me. I haven't called him at all, but I did send him these text messages today. Apparently, this is what sent him over the edge, the Epstein files. And of course, he's coming after me hard to make an example, to scare all the other Republicans before next week's vote to release the Epstein files. Marjorie Taylor Greene says it's astonishing, really, how hard he's fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out, that he actually goes to this level. She goes on to say, I have supported President Trump with too much of my precious time, too much of my own money, and fought harder for him even when almost all of the Republicans turned their back and denounced him. But I don't worship or serve Donald Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene says, for me, I remain America first and America only.
Great. Okay. Again, MTG is not my favorite. Ahead of the House vote this week on a bill to compel the release of the full Justice Department files related to Jeffrey Epstein, President Donald Trump took to social media to call for the Republicans to vote in favor of the release, a noticeable change in his past rhetoric. Interesting. After all that bullying, which went on this weekend, now he's changed his tune. The House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. Obviously, I hope that he got better advice than whatever he was doing, because it's not good and it doesn't look good. And turning on people and claiming that they're dead, and you're going to go out there and try to, remove any support and primary them simply because of this. It's a terrible look. The president's comments come after he and Senator Mike Johnson have gone to great lengths to prevent the vote. Yes, of course. So we should notice a turn. For all you 10D chess people, this is not it. Last week, the White House met with Colorado Republican Lauren Boebert in the Situation Room and attempted to pressure her into removing her name. I've got some videos of that, but I don't think I'll play them today. Just be aware that people were commenting on that at the time. It was ultimately unsuccessful, and she's one of 4 Republicans who joined with the Democrats to reach the petition 2018. Again, you will always look like somebody who changed teams because the other team has decided to side with you. It doesn't mean that you have. Just because people on the left are now suddenly interested in what I have to say about the FBI, go back and check the tapes. I've been saying it for years. The same things. And so I immediately empathize with where Thomas Massie's position is. If you say the same thing for a long time, and other people have now suddenly rallied to your cause, nice to have you along, it doesn't change the reason why I'm there. And you can always do things for 2 reasons, right? You can do it because you're working against the opposite team, or you can do it because of principles. And it looks like when the opposite team jumps in with you, that your principles somehow align with them. That's not necessarily the case. Tucker Carlson kind of addressed the principles issue too when he was talking to MTG.
So Massie has gotten in a fight, like a personal fight with the president. And unfortunately, I think it has gotten personal. I should say I don't agree with Massie's more libertarian than I am. But of all the members other than you of the Congress that I know a lot of them, he's the most principled. He's also a thoroughly decent man, like actually. And his personal life, and I know a lot about it, is like one of the most impressive things I've ever heard. He is self-reliant in the most American sense. This is a guy who lives off-grid in a house he built himself. And every one of his votes is a vote on principle. So I don't know how you couldn't admire a guy like that. I get that he annoys the president personally. Got it. But I don't think there are many people in the country who live out Donald Trump's own stated principles more precisely than Thomas Massie does. What the hell is going on that he is a target, but Lindsey Graham has an endorsement? And by the way, I just want to say clearly, I will do everything I possibly can to make sure Lindsey Graham is not reelected. Not because I like Lindsey Graham personally, he's a super charming, nice guy. But if Lindsey Graham continues to get elected, then the whole MAGA thing is totally fake. It's just...
Right? There's a Trump-Graham golf classic, and there they are hanging out in a favorable thing. Now, why should Donald Trump cozy up to this guy for any reason? And why is Tucker saying those things? It seems really clear that we have like a memory that's more than 5 seconds long, and it goes back to January 6th, which all ties all this stuff to the story of the pipe bomb and the government corruption that went along with the cover-up on it. Like, all this stuff is, in fact, related. For people that were talking for years and years about the Russia collusion story, now that the statute of limitations has passed, as we near the statute of limitations for at least some of the crimes that happened on January 6th, the ongoing cover-up, I think, would argue that there is a clear conspiracy. And I think that actually is provable based on the positions and the actions on that day, and then the ongoing actions that took place for years afterwards. And it is provable. The problem is the people who should be proving it are not. But we can still go back and check the tape and see what Lindsey Graham had to say after January 6th. Do you guys remember? He broke up with Donald Trump. For all of you Donald Trump lovers, again, I can sit on the outside. Like, I didn't feel one way or another. It's like, not my thing. I'm not emotional about this. But I can say that if somebody said these things about me, I don't think it would sit well with me. I don't know what kind of apology it would take to get you back where I'm going to go play golf with you. I don't want to play golf with you anyway. I hate golf. But if I did play golf, or we were going to go to the shooting range or something, I think this would be a big problem. And I wouldn't forget this.
Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it being this way. Oh my God, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential president. But today, first thing you'll see. All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough. I've tried to be helpful. But when the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled 4-3 that they didn't violate the Constitution of Wisconsin, I agree with the 3, but I accept the 4. If Al Gore can accept 5-4, he's not president. I can accept Wisconsin 4-3. Pennsylvania, it went to the Second Circuit. So much for all the judges being in Trump's pocket. They said, no, you're wrong. I accept the Pennsylvania Second Circuit that Trump's lawsuit wasn't right. Georgia, they said the Secretary of State took the law in his own hands. He changed the election laws unlawfully. A federal judge said, no, I accept the federal judge even though I don't agree with it. Fraud. They said there's 66,000 people in Georgia under 18 voted. How many people believe that? I asked, give me 10. Hadn't had one. They said 8,000 felons in prison in Arizona voted. Give me 10. Hadn't gotten one. Does that say there's problems in every election? I don't buy this. Enough's enough. We got to end it.
Yeah, he's done with Trump, except when he's playing golf with Trump. You know what he said about J6ers? It's also relevant. He said if he was there, he would have shot people in the head if he was the one holding the guns. This is who Trump saddles up to. It's not surprising that they don't want to release stuff about Epstein or about the J6 pipe bomber, but the J6 pipe bomber thing sounds way more incriminating than anything else. If they're willing to go and do a vote and you're going to get a change of tune, anything to cover up whatever this is all about. Because it shows that the entire government was complicit in this thing. And when I say the entire government, I mean it sounds like DOD, DOJ, Capitol Police, maybe DHS and Secret Service. Like, there's a lot of people who have a strong and vested interest in not exposing what went down on January 6th. Lindsey Graham was okay with what happened. In fact, he wished it was more violent from the response end.
Yeah, my question is about January 6th.
It wasn't peaceful. I was there. If it had been up to me, I would have shot some of these people in the head. Let me tell you why. They took over your Capitol. I don't care what the cause was. They destroyed the place.
Yeah. Maybe the worst thing for those people who remember what happened to Donald Trump in the round one, I didn't know this. This is coming from Paul Dan's campaign. He's looking to primary Lindsey Graham. So, okay, fair enough. He does not have the backing and the support of Donald Trump. He's going to put this clip out. you're going to see his little campaign message first. It's not an endorsement of his candidacy, although anybody who wants to defeat Lindsey Graham sounds good to me. It's a better alternative, probably. Haven't looked into the guy enough. But what I do know is that he plays this clip from Joe Scarborough. Apparently, Lindsey Graham claimed that he's the one who told John McCain to turn over the dossier to the FBI that ended up destroying or derailing a lot of the work that Donald Trump was trying to get done. Does that sit well with you guys as well?
Listen, here's the deal, Lindsey. This is what you should figure out. Because this is what Americans need to know. And I bet Republicans that are going to be voting in your primary next year are going to really want to know this. Who was the one that told John McCain he should turn the dossier over to the FBI? That person has a lot to answer to the voters of South Carolina. We got to figure that out.
I'm going to read this to you for those that are listening. It's the Washington Post. Senator Lindsey Graham says he told John McCain to give the Trump-Russia dossier over to the FBI. Did you know that? I didn't know that before this weekend.
Speaking with reporters yesterday, Graham said that his late colleague, Senator John McCain, showed him the document when McCain received it back in 2016. The senator says he recommended to McCain that he give it to the FBI.
What? Hold on. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Did you know this, Casey?
Don't worry.
No, Casey, hold on. Did you know that Lindsey Graham was the one that told John McCain to give the dossier to the FBI? Did you know that?
Not until he told us yesterday. No.
Sam Stein, had you ever heard that Lindsey Graham was the one that told John McCain he should give the dossier to the FBI?
No, months of Trump going after McCain for this, and we just now find out that Graham was the facilitator.
Elizabeth, did you or anybody at the Washington, you got to let me ask a question and stop interrupting. Elizabeth, did you or anybody at the Washington Bureau know that Lindsey Graham was the one that told John McCain that he should give the dossier to the FBI?
We did not.
How do you snuggle up to that guy? I'm just saying, wasn't that the single most damning thing that went down? The entire Russiagate scenario, the one that you heard Kash Patel saying, I lived through it, it was weaponizing, it came after me, I was a victim, Donald Trump was a victim, the entire government motivated move to do this thing. Lindsey Graham was involved in making sure that got into the right hands. How do you snuggle up to that guy? How do you endorse him in a primary? I don't want to hear the keep your friends close, enemies closer nonsense line. Whenever I read that, I go, can you give me an example of that working out really well for you? Can anyone give me an example of that working out? All you've done is you put your enemy close enough to stab you right in the back or the front or wherever they want. Cut your throat. Unless you are preemptively planning a kill and you have a way to stop them from doing something that will kill you, do not keep your enemies closer. What are you, nuts? Nobody does that. That's no military strategy. That's like would-be spy stuff for people who have never actually dealt with a real enemy. It doesn't work. Give me an example of when that worked really, really well for someone, keeping your friends close but your enemies closer. You end up like Julius Caesar, or your friend who's so close to you stabs you in the back. You end up like Jesus Christ, who has Judas come up and betray him with a kiss. That's what happens when your enemies are closer than your friends. They betray you. So anyway, I just want to know, how do you do that? And then meanwhile, Donald Trump's mad at this guy.
Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to the Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to the Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know.
All right, so he goes on and elaborates on this stuff. These are the things that are supposedly there, right? Whatever. You guys are asking, well, why not just talk to the victims and find out who these people are? There's a reason why you don't let someone investigate their own case. Number one, they don't have the resources. Number two, they're emotionally close to it and it doesn't hold any water. You don't let people that have a conflict of interest do the investigation. In theory, we have an FBI. We have this Federal Bureau of Investigation, which was set up to be this nonpartisan group of people that are going to go out there and suss out the truth regardless of where it leads. And then you find out they're not going to do that. That's the problem. That's the same problem that Steve Baker is facing. How come you haven't given out all the story yet? Because there's a ton of litigious issues, because the people who have been working on this for 5 years have not been giving the information to the public, have not been building a case, or even naming a subject, or getting an indictment for this person. What they've done is they've gone out there and they've obscured and they've obfuscated, and I think you guys are going to see some really, really damning evidence that is, let's call it circumstantial at the moment, but it is almost impossible to explain. It's about as impossible to explain as how the hell Kyle Seraphin and his surveillance team ends up 9 feet away from the person that this independent journalist came up with 5 years later. And allow me, while we're still talking about that, to just hone in on something really interesting. This is from Loudermilk stuff. This is going to be very relevant to you near soon. So let me just foreshadow. This is not a stay tuned. This is be aware as the news comes out. This is coming from page 9 of Loudermilk's committee's follow-up on the 4-year update on the pipe bomb investigation per whatever the FBI shared with them. Okay, page 9. Shortly after the discovery of the pipe bomb near the RNC, 3 United States Capitol Police counter-surveillance units, those are pairs, as I understand it, each unit consists of 2 United States Capitol Police plainclothes officers deployed to the surrounding area to search for similar devices. One of these units headed towards the DNC. At approximately 1:05 p.m., one of the United States Capitol Police CSU teams identified an explosive device next to a bench on the west side of the DNC building and notified the DC Metropolitan Police, MPD, officers and the United States Secret Service agents sitting inside nearby vehicles. 2 minutes later, one of the USCP CSU officers notified United States Capitol Police dispatch of the pipe bombs at the DNC. The officer stated 10-100 at the DNC as well. Similar device was found at the RNC as well, advising these units on scene here what's going on. Do not forget this paragraph. You've probably seen the video. Tom Massie helped interview this person who found that thing. Wouldn't it be interesting to know the route that they traveled and the way they got there and where they looked first before they ended up finding the pipe bomb? Now remember, for those of you who need to be refreshed, the pipe bomber, person of interest 1, who the Blaze believes is this Capitol Police officer, the night before, went and tried to place it at different locations. Would there be video of trying to place it at a previous location? One bush in the entirety of the U.S. Capitol? Just keep that in your mind. Meanwhile, you can also remember this about Epstein's story.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Okay.
That seems problematic. Let me hit the last story here. Hold on. This is what, after that testimony, there's Susie Wiles again. She's like, oh, boy, are you serious? Check us on Spotify. You may hear a Spotify ad right here. KyleSeraphinShow.com is how you get there. Very easy to do. You guys can support the program by just going over there, only because I think you'll get a better experience on it. We're building the audience on Spotify itself. It's the better of the platforms. And then at the end of the day, we don't make any more money one way or another if you are not using Spotify already. But I do think you'll get a better experience. If you're watching it on YouTube, if you're watching it on Rumble, if you're still watching here and you have not liked this video, please do that. It bumps us up in the ratings. It bumps us up on the leaderboard. Some people don't even know there is a leaderboard, but some of you guys are tracking that over on Rumble, and I appreciate you guys doing that. Let's do this last little story. It's about petty corruptions It's an ongoing problem. Well, before we get there, how about this one? This is also from Loudermilk's piece. This is about the phones. There's nobody that Epstein trafficked to. He trafficked to himself. That was our FBI director. They have no subject. Stay tuned. We're going to give you information about this soon. I'm going to just read this from Loudermilk's summary, because I was on this team at this time. They're talking about what's called the ad tech subpoenas. This is the way that your phone actually reaches out and pings things and you get advertisements because of it, because of your location. So they did these geofence warrants and they did some subpoenas for ad tech, and they tried to go out there and identify a list of people that were involved in the area. By the way, they exempted all law enforcement. Okay. We need to find out when that happened. This is not like a Candace Owens thing. This is like a legitimately, what were the underlying assumptions of the pipe bomb investigation? When did they exempt law enforcement? Which law enforcement was exempted? Were all agencies included? And how did they decide that law enforcement was exempt? Something like 12% of all arson is done by firefighters in the United States. There are plenty of cops who commit crimes. It happens. How did you decide that no police officer and no law enforcement was involved in this particular crime? I want to know. By March 2021, the case team identified one ad ID whose movements matched the suspect's movements as outlined in the video the FBI released tracking the suspect's whereabouts. The case team, as a result, conducted further research and requested the FBI's Special Operations Group conduct surveillance on this person of interest tied to the ad tech ID. Requested. I was on the team in March of 2021. I was busy. We had a baby. We were getting ready to move. But I don't remember this, and neither do my friends. They were never sent out, as far as we can tell, on another pipe bomb subject. The case team, as a result, conducted further research. The FBI found that the ad ID movements matched the subject's movements as outlined in the video. Special Operations Group was requested. Here's the best part. It ultimately remains unclear what happened to this lead. Just like when I read you guys the other day. Person of interest 1, person of interest 2, person of interest 3. They cleared person of interest 3. It's unclear how they did that. So the two best subjects they had for doing the two most nefarious things that happened, it's unclear to the Loudermilk Committee why that happened. And the person who was the liaison between Loudermilk's committee and the FBI is now the liaison between the FBI and the new Loudermilk Committee. And that's Marshall Yates. And he's one of the people, folks, who didn't get one of those background checks in the same way, who didn't have to take a polygraph. Are you tracking what I'm saying right now? If you got the answer, give us the answer. If you don't, maybe consider that you're part of the problem.
I'm telling you, don't trust anyone, me included. We don't bring receipts, throw it out the window. I'm telling you, don't trust anyone.
That's all I'm saying. Everybody out there posting, I trust Dan, I trust Kash, I believe this, I believe that. Why? Why would you believe these things? This lady doesn't believe them. That's the word on the street. Let me finish with one little story, which is incidentally true. If you guys listen to the Kyle Seraphin Show, this is not news to you, but apparently it's news to the MSNBC audience. Once again, reminding you that the message is more important than the messenger. This comes from Ken Delanian. Many of you may not like Ken. I actually don't care all that much. What I care is the story is true. Just like the New York Times. It can be true even if you don't like the New York Times. You don't have to like Adam Goldman. You don't have to like Ken Delanian. It's irrelevant whether the story has validity or not. Kash's girlfriend is being protected by FBI SWAT agents as a security perk. Agents on the detail with the country singer would presumably be unable to respond or operate in a delayed fashion if they had to go out there and do something for the SWAT work. That was released this morning. They just found out. I sent it to Ken. I was like, yeah, I've been talking about this for weeks. She had at least 5 agents which were broken off the Salt Lake City detail back when Charlie Kirk was killed, because apparently she was walking around when Kash Patel was doing the crime scene walks of the Kirk assassination. This is not a new story, and it's not new to you if you listen to me. But suddenly you're hearing the left pick it up. Why? Because they smell blood in the water on Kash Patel. That's fine. I'll take them covering the story. The fact of the matter is, the real issue is you now have federal agents who are not authorized under DOJ policy to actually use their force policies. They can't use the less than lethal, and they cannot use lethal force simply as a protective detail because she's not a DOJ protectee. This is what corruption looks like. I've known about this for a while. She's not a spouse. She has no legal tie to this man. Your partner in life and being a country music sensation notwithstanding, you are not part of the government. You're not a government employee and you are not the spouse of a government employee. There is no requirement that we, the taxpayers, foot your security bill. And yet this is going on. And once again, it puts the agents in serious jeopardy, which is why I continue to be a voice for the inside and the outside. Do I love the FBI? No. Do I love some FBI agents? Yes. Alexis Wilkins, I'm reading from the story here. Alexis Wilkins, Patel's girlfriend, has a security detail made up of elite FBI agents usually assigned to the SWAT team in the field office in Nashville. I'm told it's 2 at a time, which means there's probably about 5 on any given week that are cycling in, where she spends time for her work. She and Patel first met in Nashville and they travel together at times. They do not share a residence. Patel travels to Washington for work, but he keeps a legal residence in Las Vegas. They don't even co-locate in the same places. She's not a spouse. They don't have spousal privilege. She's not read in, as far as I can tell, into the security protocols. There's more coming out about this as well. Stand by for whistleblower disclosures, people. The security division and the FBI's insider threat division are very concerned about this stuff. This is why this stuff matters. People familiar with the FBI security protocol said they were unaware of any instance in which a girlfriend of top FBI officials received a government-staffed security detail. Former FBI Director Chris Wray's wife, Helen, occasionally received security details. She lived with Wray in their home in Atlanta. Wray spent part-time there and part-time in D.C. I didn't like that arrangement either. You guys will know that I said that. I didn't like him flying down there. SWAT agents on the team were detailed to Wilkins, presumably might be unable to respond or would be delayed in responding to crisis that might develop in their territory, such as a mass shooting, terror attacks, and more importantly, allow me to tell you that members of the flight team had to give up their vehicles. The flight team is the elite counterterrorism unit that actually deploys overseas to do specialized work. And they had to lose a couple of their vehicle allotments because they went to Nashville so that there's a security detail vehicle there. That's where it came from. All that comes out of what's called SIRG, and they just fired the guy who was in charge of SIRG not the other day because of the pilot, scenarios, the plane scenarios that they were trying to block out. All of this stuff ends up being connected. If you put petty corruption and people who are involved in petty corruption in charge, they can't pass security backgrounds. They're doing things for their own enrichment. And as I read here, the president is only allowed to accept certain things. Why is it that our people who are sub-president level executive officials, why do they get perks and benefits that are commensurate with being the president? I read that Article 2 stuff and it just reminds me. Theoretically, they're subservient to this. These people all live for themselves, which is the reason why, our attorney general is doing a big press conference about a guy with a baseball bat and not about the really serious stuff that's going on in this country. Because they're unserious people. And I think I'm trying to prove that to you. I just want serious people to run our government. I don't like government to begin with, but if we're going to have it, let's have serious people who actually understand the gravity of what they've taken on. How about that? Should we do something kind of funny to end it off here? For all of you that have been in the chat, those of you, I'm putting you on the screen right now. There you are. We really appreciate you guys showing up in the mornings. It's really cool. We're gaining audience over on YouTube. That's fun to see. Cleared 15,000 en route to 16 again. We're just slowly, organically building a group of people that want to have a nuanced conversation about what's accurate. We don't all agree. We're not supposed to all agree. Make sure your principles hold. Make sure you evaluate what I'm saying against your own principles and then decide what your opinions are. Don't get instinctive and tribal. You'll be way better off and way better served. Sometimes you'll find out that you're disappointed by people out there. No big deal. It happens. Even me, I'll disappoint you for sure. Let's do something funny. This does not disappoint. One of you created this. I can't help but play it. AI scares the crap out of me, people. It continues to do weirder and weirder things. This is a fake clip. This is not real, but this is your palate cleanse today. This is a fake news story about my new location as we move from this huge Target store that's being built down the street from us. I guess I can take up residence in the cavernous location of Julie Kelly's empty head. Someone actually made this and sent it to me. Here you go.
This man is wanted for embarrassing the FBI. He is considered armed with facts which are dangerous to the director.
He was last seen living in this woman's head.
Authorities say he entered via a gate that was being analyzed.
We had our team put together this recreation of what it might look like in there.
Julie Kelly just sent me her classified documents viewer. Would you look at that? Nothing to see here.
This is outrageous!
Oh, well, isn't that something? We'd like to thank our team for putting that together for us. This man is wanted for...
I guess it's on a loop. I'll post that over on the Locals channel for you guys who want to laugh about it. Thanks for listening today. This week is going to be spicy. I can actually guarantee it because the stuff that's going to come out is going to destroy some underlying assumptions about credibility for some of the agencies that have been peddling these lies. I've seen the videos already. So I'm not speaking out of turn. It's just not my story to share. And what I do is I keep people's story in confidence, but I am going to keep hyping it because it's not over. It's not over as the folks over at NBC would like to have you believe. The cold water didn't hit. It was lukewarm. It felt nice. And now we're going to get it done. All right. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. I hope you have a fantastic Monday as you start your week.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.